Well, the results are in. No one is saving any money. And before you think you've heard this story before, you haven't heard this version of it, because today's video is based on all of the latest data that just came out from Bankrate's annual emergency savings report. Now, I have referenced data like this before on the channel from previous reports, but this is the latest. And this goes to show you how much of dire straits Americans are in right now and how far behind everybody is falling financially. And I think it's important for everybody to understand this. Number one, to see where you stand in all of this. How do your finances stack up compared to what a lot of people are going through? But also, it's going to give you a nice heads up and a nice clue of where the economy goes from here. Because the more we understand about the financial hardships that others are facing right now, then the more we can kind of predict where things are going to go. What's the next thing I should invest in? What's the next thing I should do with my money? How should I be saving and spending my own money? Things like that. So unfortunately, what Bankrate's latest annual emergency savings report shows us is that we are essentially a paycheck to paycheck nation now in the United States. And I know it's kind of been like that for a while, but unfortunately it's getting worse. In fact, right now, fewer Americans have a financial safety net to cover inevitable, unexpected expenses than ever before, despite low unemployment and steady job growth, or that's what they say is happening anyways. So out of the 1,000 people that they surveyed, 73% of Americans say that they are now saving less money than they did in past years. That's almost everybody, guys. 89% say they would need an emergency fund equal to 3 months worth of their expenses in order to feel financially secure, and 27% reported having no emergency savings at all. That's like a third of everybody having no emergency savings, nothing. And things are just kind of heading in the wrong direction in general, because according to the New York Fed's latest consumer debt report, there's about $8 trillion in consumer debt right now as of the third quarter of 2024. And all 50 states, every single state throughout the entire country, saw their average credit scores decline in 2024, which is likely due to the fact that people have a higher debt-to-income ratio than ever before. We're seeing that credit card balances and credit card delinquencies are hitting record highs right now. And of course, you're going to have your credit score fall if you fall into this category. If you're somebody that is using more and more of your credit score goes down just because of that. That alone will tank your credit score, even if you pay your bill on time, because you're using too much of your available credit. And so it's no wonder that every single state throughout the entire country is seeing this right now. About 37% of Americans are not prepared to handle a $400 emergency, guys. You know, with inflation and everything that we've seen happen over the past 5 years, I wouldn't even consider $400 an emergency anymore. I would consider that the bare minimum to be financially viable in this world. You know, if you don't have $400 to your name, then you essentially have nothing. $400 isn't even a lot of money anymore, unfortunately. It used to be, but inflation has changed that. And this is like one of the most alarming things from this new survey, if you ask me, guys. It's that 36% of Americans now have more credit card debt than they have savings. Only 41% of Americans said they used their savings to cover a major unexpected expense of $1,000, which is down from 44% from the 2024 edition of this survey. So what this shows you is the declining ability of Americans to handle financial emergencies and an increase in the number of people relying on debt to finance them. And what this does is it perpetuates a debt cycle. You know, people get further and further into debt because every time something comes up, every time you get one of these $400, $1,500 emergencies, whatever, and you have more in debt than you have in savings, you're just going to throw it on the credit card. So your credit score continues to decline, like we talked about a minute ago, and you continue to rack up more debt at a time when interest rates on credit cards are arguably at all-time highs. Not a very good combination. You know, it almost makes me wonder what would happen if people didn't have credit cards. If nobody in America had a credit card to use for anything, and people only had to use the money that they have in their wallet, in their bank account, saved, whatever, their retirement savings, money that actually belongs to them, I think our entire economy would collapse overnight, guys. I think that's how dire this situation is. People rely and lean on credit cards so much that without them, we would have nothing. You know, people wouldn't have the cars, people wouldn't have all of the new gadgets, all the new cell phones, nothing. People wouldn't even be able to afford to put gas in their car or put food on the table in a lot of cases. I think you would see the homeless population spike out of control in this country if it wasn't for credit cards. This is dire. And when you look at younger generations, not even that young, Gen Xers and millennials, 47 and 46% of them said that they actually have more debt than they have savings. That's almost half, guys. And Gen Xers, that goes up to what? Like somewhere in your mid-50s? Like, this is crazy. You know, you're in your mid-50s, you're in your mid-40s, and you have more debt than you have money saved. This is the time when you're supposed to finally, break through and be able to, gain a foothold on your financials once you become, in your mid-30s, 40 years old. This is when you start to mature and make more money and hopefully save more and have more invested. And listen, I get it. Not everybody can do that if your income level is low and you've had a lot of setbacks in life. There's extenuating circumstances for everything. One thing that's kind of annoying is people always say things like, oh, well, things happen, Michael. People go through things, and that's why it's like this. Yeah, I understand that. I get it, guys. I know that there's a reason for everything, okay? And some people just fall on hard times. Some people just have bad luck, okay? That's fine. Same thing with the eviction thing we talked about the other day. Oh, you have all these corporations that get, bankruptcy and all this debt forgiveness, but we can't wipe away eviction records. It's not about that. Okay, I understand that everybody gets a pass sometimes, whether it's fair or not. I'm just saying that everything has gotten completely out of control when it comes to this. It's never going to get any better unless the hammer drops, guys. Somebody's going to have to start paying their bills. Now, according to the Bankrate survey, one of the top concerns that everybody has on their mind right now is job loss. Obviously, we've seen the layoffs tick up quite a bit in 2024, and it's showing no signs of that slowing down into 2025. And we have the savings rate that is down right now. You have 69% of Americans saying that they wouldn't be able to cover their immediate living expenses if they lost their job or they lost their primary source of income. Guys, that's 70% of people that can't afford to live, and they're living paycheck to paycheck. If they lost their job, then this is going to put them in the hole financially. And it turns out the closer you are to retirement age, the less you fear losing your job, which makes a lot of sense. And obviously the younger you are and the more working years you have ahead of you, the more losing a job is a concern. But there is one glimmer of hope in this Bankrate annual survey, and they found that 36% of US adults are now prioritizing both paying down debt and increasing emergency savings, which is the highest percentage in 7 years. So that's actually really good news. And I would like to think that my channel at least has played a small part in that uptick in people trying to be more responsible financially, because this is something I talk about here constantly on the channel. That's why I bring up things like this, basically to show you exactly what not to do. They say here that there's a growing awareness of the importance of balancing debt reduction with building financial reserves, and people are starting to do it. You have about 30% of US adults that are saving more in 2024 than they did in 2023, which is the highest increase that we've seen since 2020. So in that sense, the people who are motivated to turn their lives around, the people who are motivated to become more financially stable are doing it, guys, and that's really good news. Obviously, it's not everybody. You have a lot of people still in hot water when it comes to their finances, but when you have like a third of the population that is deciding to do something about it, that's positive news. But when I hear this data and how I interpret this and how I think, people should react to it is, first of all, if you're somebody who's not in this situation and you're doing well financially, now is the time to lean into that even more, guys, to save more, to invest more, to get even further ahead. Because as the state of the economy continues to decline, that puts you in an even more powerful position to take advantage of future opportunities as they come along, and they will. There's going to be opportunities in the stock market. There's already becoming opportunities with real estate. There's going to be opportunities with all sorts of different things out there. Starting businesses, who knows? If you're somebody in the middle that, maybe you're not living paycheck to paycheck, maybe you're not, drowning in credit card debt, but you could be doing better. You could be saving a lot more of your income if you were just more diligent. This should give you the swift kick in the gut that you might need to start doing that, because you don't want to end up like these people who are on the bottom. And if you are somebody who is on the bottom, then you already know what you have to do. You already know the path forward. You know that you have to cut the spending. You know you have to stop relying on the credit cards. You know you have to increase your income and your savings. Those are all things that you have to do now. Whether or not you choose to do it, it's completely up to you. Now, the last part of this, we talked about how one of the major concerns that everybody has right now is losing their job, and rightfully so. There are so many layoffs that we have seen happen over the past year, or 2 years really. And here's the latest one, guys. This is a huge layoff notice, maybe even the largest one we've seen in the past couple of years. Estee Lauder, they announced they're going to be cutting 7,000 jobs, guys. 7,000. The largest layoff notice I think we saw last year was from, Amazon or Microsoft, one of these tech companies, and they announced that they were going to be laying off like 5,000 people in one shot. This is 7,000. So this is huge. And they say pretty much the same thing that every other company that's making mass layoffs happen right now is, we are significantly transforming our operating model to be leaner, faster, more agile, while taking decisive actions to expand consumer coverage. We're increasing innovation. We're increasing consumer-facing investments to better capture growth and drive profitability. Those are all just fancy ways of saying we're using less people and more AI to become more efficient. That's what a lot of companies are doing right now, and that's why you're seeing massive layoffs like this. And Estee Lauder owns a bunch of these big popular fashion brands like Bobbi Brown Cosmetics, Tom Ford, Aveda, Joe Malone London. There's a lot of brands that they own that you're going to see people lose jobs from. They're also looking at outsourcing a lot of positions. So that means, lowering operating costs that way, giving the job to somebody who can do it for significantly less, including robots that do it for free. The company is actually expecting their third quarter sales from last year to fall 12% to 10%. So that's huge. That's a huge reduction right there. And what you can also gather from a story like this is people are spending significantly less on luxury goods right now when it comes to cosmetics, when it comes to things like cologne, makeup, all sorts of high-end things that people don't need, or if they do need it, they're going to look for a cheaper alternative right now, and they're ditching the luxury stuff. Now, one thing a lot of people can do, if you are struggling right now, if you're somebody who doesn't have the $400 for an emergency or has more in debt than they have in savings, there are things you can do, guys, besides just save money. One thing that's going on right now as a pushback against this current economy and how much everything costs is what's called a no-buy challenge. This is something that's picking up steam across different social media outlets. Basically, what people are doing is they're showcasing a strict budgeting lifestyle and showing this as the way to go for a bunch of people who are tired of inflation and constantly trying to be sold something. Obviously, minimalism has been around for a long time, so it's not like this is exactly anything new, But the part that is new is people are getting so tired of how much everything costs that people are starting to push back against this, and that's how they're doing it. And actually, this is a great way to improve your finances, is by doing one of these no-buy challenges. In fact, even though I don't do them myself here on the channel, I would argue that I do that in real life automatically. You know, I hardly buy anything. Now, part of that is because I've already bought a lot of things that I've wanted over the years as I've saved for them and as I've been able to acquire things. And I'm also not a huge material possession person. I don't need to have a million things to be happy, you know, so that's the other part of it. I already have pretty much everything I've ever wanted to buy. So how much more can you buy is what it comes down to for me, you know. Obviously, I still have to purchase all the essentials just like everybody else. I don't spend hardly any money on entertainment or going out to eat or, you know, buying new guitar items all the time. Like, I do buy new guitar stuff every year, but it's minimal, guys. It's a small amount I spend on a hobby, you know? So if you're somebody who wants to do this, basically what you need to do is you need to look at your spending. You need to take a look at what your money's being spent on and figure out which part of that spending is essential and which part of it isn't. And you need to cut out all of the non-essential stuff, at least for a certain period of time. A lot of people try to do it for a month. Can I go an entire month without spending any money that I don't absolutely have to spend? Obviously, you got to pay your electric bill, you got to pay your rent, you got to pay for your car, stuff like that. That, of course, is essential spending. But going to the movies isn't. Going out for ice cream isn't. Going out for a nice dinner is not. You know, getting a couple of drinks at the bar is non-essential spending. Buying a new video game is not essential spending. Buying a new guitar is not essential spending. You get what I'm saying? And if you're tired of seeing your wallet empty and your bank account empty, this is a great way to kind of push back against that, because obviously everyone's sick of inflation, guys, and that's what the people who are doing these challenges are doing. They're pushing back against the status quo right now and saying, you know what, I don't need to buy this stuff. I can go without it, at least for a period of time. And I can save my money. I can push back against these higher prices by just choosing not to buy it. And what have I always told everybody here on the channel? With everything, no matter what it is, you vote based on what you buy, okay? You are voting with your wallet every time you buy something or you don't buy something. And so this is actually the biggest way that consumers can have any sort of meaningful impact on the current economy. You know, this is what I keep telling people to do with houses. If everybody would just stop buying houses for a couple of years, you know what would happen to the price of houses? They would deteriorate. They would plummet, because you'd have all these sellers that need to sell a house. You have no buyers in sight. Everybody's boycotting the housing market. Well, guess what? They're going to have to bring the prices down so low to where people can't refuse. Make them an offer they can't refuse. You know, it's going to be like that. And the offer that you can't refuse is half-price homes. People are going to start jumping back in then. They won't be able to boycott forever. It'll be too good to be true. I have to buy this house now. Same thing goes for cars. Tired of how expensive cars are? Stop buying new cars. Just stop. And I know all this is easier said than done, and it's probably never going to happen, but this is how people, as a collective power, can have a tremendous amount of influence over what happens over prices of items. You know, if you're tired of paying too much for something, stop buying it, because you are contributing to the higher price. You are increasing demand every time you purchase it. That's the cycle. This is how it works. Some people are also doing this out of the fact of just knowing that they need to slow down on their spending. They need to stop being so materialistic. They have too much stuff. People accumulate all sorts of things inside their house and they realize they hardly ever use it. And that's all money that was wasted. They could have saved or invested instead. I talked to one girl who did this all the way back in 2020, so 5 years ago, you know, before inflation ticked up as much as it did. And she was able to save $10,000 in 1 year, guys. So I would argue that a lot of people would be able to save even more than that in 2025 just because of how much everything actually costs now. Just because of the sheer price increases, naturally you're going to save more because everything costs, you know, 50% more than it did 5 years ago. You know, an entirely separate Gallup poll that has nothing to do with the Bankrate survey we talked about at the beginning 56% of Americans are reporting that this year is going to come with a great amount of economic difficulty. Well, yeah, it is. This is what I've been saying here on the channel for the past few years that people don't want to look at. People are refusing to believe that, we're in bad shape right now, and everybody thinks things are just going to get better overnight, that some miracle is going to happen, Fed's going to lower interest rates, and everything's going to go back to being perfect. It's not. Fed's been lowering interest rates, things are getting worse. And ultimately, though, the whole idea behind this is it puts you in the position of power, right? It puts you in the position of control. Like, you can't control what's happening with the price of anything, guys, but what you can do is you can control what you buy and how much of it you buy and how much debt you take on to buy any given item. So that is within your control. It always has been. And it's time for people to start exercising that control in a more responsible way. Otherwise, we're just going to continue to be a paycheck to paycheck nation, and people are going to be struggling financially until the end of time. And even if it's something small, a lot of people are reporting, after doing this challenge of just trying to stick with essentials, that they're saving only like $100 a week, which isn't a lot, right? But guess what? Over a month, that's $400, and that's the $400 that so many people say that they don't have for the emergency. Just in 1 month, you could have that $400 for an emergency by just cutting back a little bit. Some people are even doing this out of the hate for Trump, believe it or not. They're saying, oh, we don't want Trump to win, we don't want Trump to succeed, so I'm boycotting this current economy. I want it to fail, essentially. Well, great. Go ahead and do that, because all you're doing is bettering your own financial position, and you're going to help reset this economy back to where it needs to be. So either way, you're helping yourself, you're helping everybody else. It's not really hurting anybody. Regardless of what one person does, we're going to see some sort of economic downturn under Trump's watch. It's always would have been like that, guys, because we were already headed in that direction before Trump got elected. He might be able to do some things to turn it around or try to slow it down, but that stuff takes time, and it's not immediate. We're still going to have to go through a lot of pain before we get back to the good times. But you can speed up how fast you get back to the good times by not falling into these traps that we talked about throughout this video. So, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.